Every single breath you take from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed comes from the ocean, because the ocean basically generates the oxygen you breathe. It controls the climate, for example. So even if you live very far from the ocean, you are connected to the ocean, because that's where life starts from. So that's something to share with people who don't understand the ocean or doesn't understand the importance of the ocean. My name is Omar Yusuf. I am the REEF Ranger in charge of research and monitoring at REEFolution Trust. I have worked in conservation for 4 years now, because I officially started working at REEFolution right after I finished my university. That's in the year 2021. Unofficially, I like using the name Son of the Islands because of my connection to the islands where I was born. So growing up in Mombasa, I always had this connection with the ocean. So I remember from a very young age, every single time I came close to the ocean, I felt this kind of excitement and curiosity. And I remember the first time my parents actually took me to the ocean, about probably 5 years. And I think it was love at first sight with the ocean. Our lives depend on the ocean, not just in terms of the air we breathe, even in terms of mitigating our climate, because a small imbalance in the ocean, we have a lot of, for example, unpredicted weather events which will affect you directly or indirectly. The ocean regulates the climate, so if the ocean is not balanced, climate change happens. It will affect you either one way or the other, whether it's through a wildfire or extreme heat or desertification or anything. Even in terms of food, you see that 1 billion people depend on the ocean for their daily food. So you are somehow connected to the 1 billion people that will lose their life if the ocean dies. I joined REEFolution right after finishing my university because of the experience I had with a friend who was here before me. The kind of stories he used to tell me about the underwater world, about the fascinating stuff they were doing here. A reef ranger, from a day-to-day basis, they dive, they conduct the work underwater, mostly doing maintenance on the trees or deploying artificial reef structures or joining a survey, conducting the monitoring, identifying the fish underwater, and learning about the work that we do underwater. A reef ranger also informs people, and a reef ranger also advocates for the ocean through engaging communities and engaging people and informing them about the importance of the ocean and about the importance of conserving the ocean. Coral reefs support about 25% of all marine organisms found in the ocean. They provide habitat for fish, they provide habitat for benthic organisms, they provide a habitat for other organisms that are found on the reef. So that means that 25% of all marine organisms, either directly or indirectly, depend on the coral for their survival. And at one stage of their life, they go through the coral reefs to either reproduce or to feed or to or to do anything that benefits them ecologically. So I will say they are the most important ecosystems found in the ocean, and that's why coral reefs are usually called the rainforest of the ocean, because of all the biodiversity that are found in the coral reefs. Coral bleaching is a state in which the corals turn ghostly white, mostly, and this state usually tells stress. Basically, it usually shows that the corals are stressed. So the stress could be either because the water temperatures are rising, or it could be because of sedimentation or any other type of stress. One fascinating thing about the corals, they survive under a small range of temperatures, and of course they are mostly found in the tropics. So a small shift in their conditions, for example, more sediments in the ocean or more heat in the ocean, means that the corals will be stressed. This doesn't necessarily mean that the corals will die, but if the stress is prolonged, the corals will definitely die at some point. It's like a human being. So the normal temperature for a human being is 37.5, I think. So if you have a temperature rise of about 1 degree, for example, you'll probably feel feverish. But if you have if you are feverish for 2 weeks, you're probably in the hospital lying on the bed. So if temperatures rise for 2 degrees, you're probably in the ICU. So basically that's what happened. That's what's happened with the corals. In the year 2024, even earlier in the late years of 2023 in other regions, for example in the Caribbean, there was rise in sea temperatures. About 80% of the coral reefs in the region actually underwent through bleaching, and there was about 40% mortality on average in most of the region. So on top of the stress that the corals were already experiencing from pollution, from sedimentation, we had extended periods of sea surface temperatures, which meant that the corals were more stressed in 2024. Here at REEFolution specifically, we use the coral gardening technique, which is a technique actually that was developed from reforestation, so basically from restoration of forest, which means planting corals first in a nursery, and after a certain period, when the corals grow, they're usually outplanted on the reef, either directly on the reef or on artificial reefs. So here at REEFolution, we mostly use the floating tree nurseries for coral propagation. Initially, when the project started, we used corals of opportunity, which are corals that have been broken off from the natural reef, and then we outplant them on the nursery trees, give them about 6 to 12 months until they are bigger sizes, and then outplant them on artificial reefs. As of last year, after the bleaching, our main focus was to propagate corals that are more resilient. So during the bleaching, we were mostly monitoring the corals that are more resilient and outplanting them on the nurseries. For the second stage of the restoration, which is the use of artificial reefs here in our case, and we use artificial reefs because the reef here in the Wasini Channel has been degraded, and there is no natural substrate, so it's mostly rubbly, and the rubble is usually very unstable for planting corals on. Here specifically, we use different types of artificial reefs. So we use artificial reefs made from concrete, artificial reefs made from steel, and we try to use a combination of these methods in one area, because these different types of artificial reefs bring a different complexity to the reef, because naturally a reef is usually very complex. So we are trying to bring big structures, small structures, to attract, of course, different kind of fish, and to also attract new recruits of corals. One of the biggest challenges is, of course, coral reef restoration is very expensive. It explains why we have so little initiatives, not just here in Kenya, but also in the region. It's also very expensive to get professionals to do the actual coral reef restoration. And it's also expensive because most of the techniques that are currently being used here in the region are scuba based. So you have to get scuba gear and dive underwater. So if you want to restore corals at a larger scale, you kind of want to make coral reef restoration economically viable, or I will say very cheap. So that means introducing low-cost techniques for restoring corals, low-tech technique, of course, because you also want to involve more people, like community members who directly depend on the reef. So how do you actually empower communities to restore the reef? Here at REEFolution, that's one of the things that we actually focus on, trying to find ways of restoring the reef by making it less expensive and more accessible to community members and other people. What has monitoring showed us in terms of fish biomass and biodiversity? I will say some really positive results. Results between restored areas and the natural reef found here in the Wasini Channel. In terms of fish biomass, there wasn't a significant difference. It was almost the same. So there was as much fish in the restored area as a natural reef, which is very good. We actually found that there were more fish species found here in the restored area in the channel compared to the marine park, which is a protected area. Something that's very personal for me, because I come from the coastal community, and the coastal community here at Mkwiro is no different to the coastal community where my grandma comes from, or where I was born. It's the same coastal community. So empowering communities, of course, is very important, because I want to see my community grow. I want to see my community save the ocean which they depend on, and because I have the knowledge and I have the expertise, so I want to keep empowering communities and helping them. When we heard that the national record for freediving in Kenya was 30 meters, a lot of the rangers here in the team actually said that they could beat that record and want to beat that record. So that's something that's really fascinated me, and I'm actually very optimistic that we are actually going to beat the national record. Not just myself, but most of the team members will definitely do that, hopefully. Something that people could do, rather than just informing themselves about the important work we do, is actually pay us a visit, understand what's happening in the ground, how do we do our work. And then from there, of course, I will say we also need support in terms of finances. Who can you connect us to? Who can you partner us with that can actually advance our work? So that's what people who don't know REEFolution can do to support the project.